Good morning, everybody. It's great to have everybody here. I'm sure we'll have a few more folks coming in just a few more moments, but we will go ahead and get started. I'm Jimmy McCullough. I direct the Tennessee High School Press Association and teach journalism here at Lipscomb University. One thing I always like to try to do at the very start is to see where everybody is from. So I know we have a lot of counties represented. If you are from West Tennessee, anybody from West Tennessee here today? We got a few in the back. Good. Let's hear from you. Let's hear from Middle Tennessee folks. Excellent. And I know we have some East Tennessee folks. Let's hear from East Tennessee. I would like for Mr. David Flannery and his students to stand up just for a moment. I think they're back there. These are some middle school journalists. They are from John Sevier Middle School. Let's give them a hand. They came to Nashville last night, spent the night, and they are here with us. Thank you very much for being with us. We look forward to seeing you throughout the day. On behalf of THSPA, we appreciate Lipscomb University being the host school since 2009, and certainly for using the campus today. And to welcome us here, we've asked President Randy Lowry to be here today. We appreciate very much the leadership that he has shown us for the last several years as he had been president. So we'll ask him to just say a few words. If you will, please welcome our president, Dr. Randy Lowry.
Well, good morning and welcome to Lipscomb University. We are privileged to have you here and can do that because this is fall break for us. When I first came to Lipscomb 9 years ago, I came to work on this day and no one was here. And it was a quiet place, but you are now filling our halls. You'll take up the Azell Center today, and you'll be involved in a really, really good activity. Besides welcoming you, what I want you to do is remember one phrase. It's a phrase that I use with our freshmen every year as they gather at this university. We have about 6,000 students in the total university, been here 124 years, a long, long time. Try to do education in a very personal and unique way. But here's what I say to students. I say you can't be who you need to be if you remain where you are. Think about that for just a couple seconds. You can't be who you need to be if you remain where you are. Not a very complex statement, not particularly dramatic, but think about the reality of that. And so as I welcome students from 48 states and about 60 foreign countries, they all are living proof that they are going to be something different, but they couldn't do that where they were. They had to come to Nashville, Tennessee. And as you think about your careers and the contribution you'll make, especially if you go into this particular area, the journalistic area in our nation, the communication, all of that, you're here recognizing you can't be who you need to be if you remain where you were. There's some folks back there today at school doing other things, but you're here. And it is our hope that today will inspire you, will inform you, will allow you to see yourself doing very, very important work in the future. Just as last week I was driving through Michigan, I went through Grand Rapids, and this is ancient history to you, but I stopped at the Presidential Library of President Gerald Ford. And if you go back in history, you'll remember that he became president when Richard Nixon resigned the presidency. And Richard Nixon resigned the presidency because there were people who were watching closely and investigating and publishing and saying that this behavior on behalf of the President of the United States was inappropriate. So bless you in the work you will do, the thinking you will do, and keep in mind always you can't be who you need to be if you remain where you are. Welcome to Lipscomb University.
We'll have a few housekeeping announcements after our keynote address, but I wanted to mention a couple of things first. First of all, we are all journalists here. You are with your newspaper, your yearbook, your broadcast, your literary magazine. We encourage you to not just soak up today, but cover today. Hope you will engage in writing and photography and video of things that you'll see and the things that you'll hear today. And that includes our keynote address. Feel free to write about it, tweet about it. We do have our hashtag today, hashtag THSPA14. We invite you to take pictures and shoot video. As I tell my journalism students, there's a great setting on your camera and on your video camera called sneaker zoom. What does that mean? That's right, come down front, get close. And so you are encouraged to take pictures today. Come on down front. If you're shooting video, get some good angles down front. We would encourage you to do that. For the third year, we are offering here at the workshop a writing contest. And I'm going to mention this now because teachers, if you haven't already done so, we would encourage you to find 2 or 3 students from your school, if they want to participate in one of 2 writing contests. We have a feature writing contest, and we have a sports writing contest as well. Those will take place during the first block of sessions, right after our keynote. And so we will have those students leave maybe just a little bit early so they can go to their classes. But if you would like to do that, it's not too late to join, and there's no place to sign up for it. Just show up to those rooms on the 2nd floor of Ezel. We'll have some guides that can take you there at the appropriate time. Our keynote speaker today is a familiar face and a familiar voice to those of you who live in Middle Tennessee. Since 1990, Terry Bulger with WSMV has been bringing us stories of the people and places that make Tennessee unique and interesting. His stories have been a mix of peach seed carvers, blues guitarists, humble hog farmers, and clown conventions. Terry graduated from the University of Missouri in Columbia with a journalism degree. He received the Chick Evans Scholarship awarded to hardworking caddies who spent much of their young lives on golf courses. He spent 3 summers as a vendor at Wrigley Field and Comiskey Park. He ended up taking a bit of a pay cut to pursue a career in television. Terry has worked in Amarillo and Cedar Rapids before coming to Nashville. He has won 10 Emmy Awards, an Iris Award, and more than a dozen other regional awards for Best Feature and Best Writing. He has interviewed everyone from presidents to Michael Jordan. He has covered plane crashes and droughts, but he says he remembers most the modest folks that he meets each day along Tennessee's back roads. If you will, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Terry Bulger from WSMV.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Well, hello, fellow journalists. I had a chance to talk to some of you out in the hallway beforehand, and I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're interested in journalism. It is the best. He mentioned a little bit about what I did before I got into journalism, and it wasn't much. In a way, I feel like going from a hot dog and beer vendor in Chicago while I was in college to my first job in journalism, which was at a television station, in a way tells you that I've never really had a real job, or what I consider a real job. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing. At Channel 4 here in Nashville, I've been telling stories for probably 24 years, and if you count the 2 places before that, probably a total of 30 years. And mostly what I do at Channel 4 is what we call feature stories. So those are sort of the stories about the people, the places around us that kind of just make the world interesting. I kind of often describe it as I'm the guy that comes at the end of the newscast with a story that's sort of there to remind you that the world's not as bad as all that previous stuff that you just saw on the news might tend you to believe. Obviously, that stuff's important. It has to be covered, the hard news, but there's a place for the feature story, too. I brought some stories along, 3 or 4 just short stories to give you a little bit of an idea of what I do, and then we'll talk after that a little bit about journalism, the importance of it, and where it can lead you. The first story is something I did maybe 10, 11 years ago. And oftentimes, for me, Stories are just things you hear about. Somebody might say something to you, and somebody mentioned that there was some young person out at Hendersonville High School who had a knack for singing. And I heard a little bit more about it, and I kept hearing a little bit more about it, and finally I said, well, let's go to Hendersonville High School and see if there's anything to this. She was 14 at the time. I think you've probably heard of her.
I think it's too thin. I need more hair.
Hair talk at Hendersonville High is a serious subject for 15-year-old Taylor Swift, considering her hair and face are already in national magazine ads and coming soon to the cover of her first big record.
Everything that we should be. I'll bet she's beautiful. That girl that talks about. And she's got everything that I have to live without.
She came to Nashville last year writing her own songs, singing them, and hoping someone would like them. Toby Keith did. So much so that he just signed her to his new record label. That makes them partners.
You're in the room with him and you can feel it. There's a power there and you're just like, oh my God. Temporary high.
We visited Taylor a year ago at Hendersonville High when we thought her talent was special.
Just another picture to burn.
Now, a year later, Music Row agrees. Her first record comes out in a few months. She'll tour and start the career she says she's been working for her entire life. All 15 years of it.
Most people find out what they're going to do when they're in college, and that's great, you know? But I guess for me, it just came a little earlier. And I'm so thankful for that because this happens to be a dream come true for me.
A dream that comes with her own soundtrack. Terry Bulger, Channel 4 News.
That was the first time Taylor Swift was ever on television. That story. So she's done pretty well for herself, wouldn't you say? The second story, I heard about a young man, very, very, very young, and met him, and he had a knack for knowing things about the presidents of the United States. Your history teachers would be proud of this guy. I liked him so much, I called Jay Leno, who was working at NBC at the time, and I said, I got a guy who I think would make a good guest on your show. About a month later, he was on the Jay Leno show, but he was on my show first.
George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison.
If you ask H.L. McCullough to name the presidents, you'd better have a minute.
John Tyler, James K. Polk, Zachary Taylor.
He's a White House whiz.
James Buchanan, Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Johnson, Ulysses S. Grant.
And behind every presidential man, there's a woman.
You can name all of the first ladies?
Yes, every single one. Mamie Eisenhower, Jacqueline Kennedy, Waybo Johnson, Pat Nixon.
He's not reading, he's thinking.
Hillary Clinton, Laura Bush, Michelle Obama.
That proud smile, a product of Mrs. Morgan's second grade class at Wilson Elementary in Murfreesboro.
I know more stuff than a computer knows. Sometimes.
Anecdotes.
William Henry Harrison, the first president who died in office.
Inauguration.
January 20th, and how I remember that is it's 5 days before my birthday.
H.L. credits reading for his presidential prowess.
Looking at books made me think, wow, I wish I was a president.
Wishes he was Millard Fillmore, 13th president and H.L.'s favorite.
Why do you like Millard Fillmore so much?
Because he was handsome, well-mannered, like me, kind of.
Handsome, well-mannered, and amazing.
What president was born in Kentucky and lived in Illinois?
Abraham Lincoln.
Very good.
The kid was unstumpable.
You are too smart.
Yes.
What's 3 plus 2? You're no good in math.
3 plus 2 is 5.
The whiz of Wilson Elementary, who probably knows what you're thinking.
wow, impressive, stuff like that. That's really it, mostly.
Handsome and well-mannered as well. Anybody here from Smyrna High School? Well, this one's about Smyrna High School.
You could say something's in the air at Smyrna High School, but you'd be more accurate if you just said something's in the hair. It's the color purple, and it has nothing to do with Oprah. School spirit at Smyrna High doesn't end with the fight song.
We were willing to dye our hair purple.
34 teachers took the purple plunge, curls and spikes and ingenuity, putting a different tone on the top of that dome.
All right.
You could hear students say, "They really did it, they really did it."
All triggered to kickstart the canned food drive, with the principal announcing this on the PA.
They would bring in 16,000 cans by Friday afternoon that I would dye my hair purple.
Other teachers were quick to say they would too. So the die was cast.
That's something you see every day. Well, we were like, did you hear that? They're going to dye their hair purple. And so everyone went out, and I know we just started buying cans like crazy and bringing them in so we could see the purple hair.
The purple pledge worked.
From Tuesday to Friday, our students went from 3,700 cans to 19,559 cans.
Since then, it's been purple rain on the heads of Smyrna's highest, with lots of snickering in the hallways.
It's kind of like payback in a way. So they make us work so hard, we get to like a little reward, getting to see them all silly and kind of goobery looking.
In the end, everyone wins. The hungry, school camaraderie, and even one single teacher. Now with a new do.
Actually, I did get some stares yesterday, but I did have some gentlemen say, "I really love your purple hair," so that's a plus.
If you're wondering why purple, purple and gold are the school colors for the Smyrna Bulldogs, the 20,000 cans of food, they've already arrived at the Smyrna Laverne Food Bank. Terry Bulger, Channel 4 News.
Told you they're not all serious stories that I do. And the last one, all I heard on this one was there was a furniture store in Nashville and a turkey that wouldn't go away.
The roar of life in the city can be seductive, even if your pals prefer the country. Meet the bird who takes traffic over tranquility.
Oh yeah.
Since last September, Billy Thornkill keeps getting that question.
You know there's a turkey out there?
You can't live in South Nashville and not know. Out here, that bird is the word.
People tried to catch him. He turns around and runs right back at him and gets them out of here.
Hanging out on Harding Place and about to make us all wonder, why would a turkey cross that road?
He's running across the road.
Collision-free and coincidentally right next to a Nashville police precinct, where he uses them to get safely back home.
We've had cops run behind him, gobble, 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 gobble.
Now the sales guys at Atlantic Bed and Furniture call him Mascot.
A lot of times he'll be right at the front door, greeting people as they come in.
Has he sold any sofas?
He's helped. He's great on the assist, so he'll get them in the door and then we take care of the rest.
In a way, he's a billboard, but still answers to Tom.
Anybody get that? A billboard still answers to Tom? I thought it was kind of creative. But billboard, Tom, turkey. Anyway, that's basically what I do. Try to find stories that, are just interesting as well as anything. But that's enough about me. Let's talk about you for a little bit. 30 years ago, I was in your seat. I was a high school student interested in journalism. Wrote for the school newspaper. Started like you middle schoolers over there, wrote for the school newspaper in middle school as a sports writer, same in high school, and carried on. And the thing is, in 5 years from now, if you want, you'll be full-time professional journalists getting paid. It'll happen. I didn't believe it when somebody told me that, but it's true. Somebody will hire you, whether it's a television station, a newspaper, a blog, an internet site. There's so many opportunities now for journalists. I often think, and coming here it made me think even more, to try to answer the question, what is a journalist? I mean, that's a question that has 1,000 answers. Every one of them can be right. There's no right or wrong answer. But when I look at it, I think it's as simple as can be for me. It's someone who tells you what's going on. I can sum it up like that. Somebody who tells you what's going on, and everybody wants to know what's going on. But it's the truth. Somebody who tells you the truth. And really, is there anything more important than that? Maybe it's finding the extraordinary in something that on the surface appears ordinary. That's your job. That's what people want to find out. That's what people want to hear. I know that as a journalist, you will see the world. And I don't mean the places that I've been. I've been to Hawaii. I've been to Canada as a journalist. I've been to 45 different states covering stories, hurricanes, tornadoes, silly things. But when I say you'll see the world, I don't even necessarily mean on a map. You're going to see things as a journalist that the rest of the world doesn't see. You'll go do stories that'll make you sad, that'll make the viewer or the reader sad. They'll make you want to cry. You'll see people at their worst. You'll see people at their best. You will do stories where the surroundings of the story and the story themselves will make you laugh like you've never laughed before. Whether it's what the subject of the story is doing or something that happened along the way, that's just part of your life as a journalist. You'll meet great people. You'll meet and talk to people with different skin color, different lifestyles, different life choices. Older people, younger people, rich people, poor people, a little bit of everything. You will get out of your comfort zone, I promise you that. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. My first job was in Amarillo, Texas. You couldn't get two different places with two different types of people. But it's fun. You're going to knock on doors of people that don't want you to knock on their door. And you're going to keep on knocking because you're trying to find answers to things. Again, as a journalist, that's your job. That's your responsibility. Some people don't want to tell you things. Again, it's your job to continue to find out what are the answers. And you're going to go to places, too, where people are going to invite you in, offer you a slice of pie, and they don't want you to leave. That's fun, too. It is life in the real world. That's what a journalist's life is. You're not living a cubicle life. You're out in it every day. My job at Channel 4, I have a little space in the newsroom. It's the last place I want to be. I go there in the morning, and my job is to get out of there as fast as I can and go find a story. The newsroom is a fine place. It's not a fun place. The good stuff is out in the real world. A couple of practical things. As a journalist, your job basically is to tell a story. Telling stories. Everybody wants to hear a story. You've probably told 3 or 4 to your friends already today. Everybody wants to hear a good story. What's a good story? Be interesting. Nobody wants to hear a boring, long, old story. My stories today, I don't think they were boring. I could tell you all were watching them. They're short, but I think they're interesting. In television, I have an enemy when those stories air. Fortunately, you guys didn't have it today. And that's the remote control. That is my biggest enemy, because the second I get boring, what happens? Remote control, boom, gone. Turn to another station. Same thing if I was reading a newspaper. The second the story gets boring, boom, turn the page, go to something else. Your job as a journalist all the time is to be interesting. Yearbook folks, I talked to some of you beforehand. You can work all year long on your yearbook, but just because of that, that doesn't mean people are necessarily going to pick it up and read it. Be interesting. Find a way to make people want to read what you wrote or watch what you put on television. Without that, you're not going to survive. Another thing important, be curious. Be the guy or girl that asks the question, why? It's the greatest question in the world for a journalist. Why? Why do you do this? Why the purple hair? What do you think the turkey, why would the turkey want to cross the road and kind of dodge in between traffic the way he did, like a human? Why? Curiosity is the greatest thing. If you're shy, you're 17. Everybody's somewhat shy at 17. At some point when I was 17, I'd have to call the football coach up because I was writing a sports article. I'd have to call the football coach and then, basically interview him. I was scared out of my mind. I'm going to bother this guy at home. But the funny thing you find out as you go along when you're talking to people like to talk about themselves. They're actually happy that somebody cares enough to ask them questions about what they're doing. Unless they're doing something that they don't want you to ask them about, but most people aren't. Most people are good and are interested and glad that you called. So don't be scared when you call people. Another practical thing for a wannabe potential journalist, do everything. Never say no. When an opportunity comes along, give it a try. If it has something to do with journalism, give it a chance. You might like it, and you might not. If you don't like it, don't do it. Stop. Don't waste your time. You'll figure it out quickly because it's important that you like it. Journalism is a job where you better like it. And the only way you can find out if you really like it or not is by doing it. So never say no. When you go back to your high school, you're going to sit next to fellow classmates that want to be accountants, business people, salespeople, engineers, all the important things that we need in the world to keep the world spinning. And I can guarantee you one thing about all of that. Those people sitting next to you are going to have a bigger paycheck than you, a bigger house, probably a nicer car. Journalists, if you want to be a journalist, understand and accept that now, because it's likely to happen. But I also think that the folks that do that, and again, I'm telling you, they're important jobs that they do, but they won't remember what they did last week, because it's all kind of the same. A journalist's job is different every day. And what you do will be unforgettable. Just here, I can think of people that I've met just in Tennessee. A fellow named Buster Monday in Orlinda, Tennessee, who wore a hat that said he was the town handyman, small little town. Anytime something broke, they called Buster, he'd come and fix it. Wore a hat that said, "You're going to miss me when I'm gone," long before there was a country music song that said that. Things I remember. I remember a man named Cordell Kemp, who I met in a creek. He was walking in a little creek out in the middle of nowhere in Tennessee. Older guy, overalls, hardly any teeth, had a fedora on. And I asked him, "Where are we? I don't even know where we're at. We're kind of lost in the middle of nowhere." And he kept saying, "This is difficult." I said, "No, I'm sorry, where are we?" And he'd say, "This is difficult." And I thought, oh, this poor guy, something's wrong, or he can't speak because all I can hear him saying is, "This is difficult." It must be hard for him to talk. And 10 seconds later, I realized, no, I was in Difficult, Tennessee. That was the name of the town. So every time he was saying, "This is difficult," he was trying to tell me, "This is Difficult, Tennessee." He's considered one of the greatest banjo players that ever lived, but he kind of just stays in that little place. That's an unforgettable moment for me, meeting somebody like that I never would have met if I wasn't a journalist. A couple months ago, I did a story at the homeless shelter here in Nashville. And it was basically a story about how every night in this town, 50 or 60 children under the age of 7 sleep in the homeless shelter on bunk beds, sometimes 2 or 3 kids on each bunk. And there was a program where folks came in and gave the kids cameras and asked them to go out with the camera and photograph your dream. They had 48 hours. The pictures came back, they got developed, and 90% of them were photos of homes. That's what the kids' dreams were, to someday have a home. That's an unforgettable, priceless moment that you get as a journalist. I'll leave you with this. When I was a 10-year-old, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I had a paper out, the Chicago Sun-Times and the Chicago Tribune. And I'd get up in the morning and I'd deliver the news to the people along that paper route. And I remember I'd walk around and I'd look up and I'd wonder, I wonder what it's going to be like to be grown up and have a grown-up's job. And now here I am, 30-some years later, and I get up in the morning and I go to Channel 4, and in a way I'm still telling people the news along my little Channel 4 television route. And I still sometimes wonder what it would be like to be grown up and have a grown-up's job. Thank you, and if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. If you want to be journalists, you have to ask questions. It's part of the job. Curiosity again comes into it. Sometimes you just see things and you turn it into something. A lot of times you'll get phone calls, people will give you a tip. But you'd be amazed what you just see if you're driving in a car. So many times I've been out driving in a car, I'll drive a mile and I'll say to the person sitting next to me, the photographer usually, turn around, I think I just saw something back there. So it's kind of like eyes wide open. Look around, be curious, and you'll see things and you'll say, I think there's something there. Other times you just kind of hear things, people will tell you stuff. Just listen, keep your ears open. For a feature story, that's how you find the best ones. The best stories are the ones where you go to the person and they tell you, I haven't done anything. I don't deserve to be on TV. Those are the good stories. The not so good ones are the people who come up to you and say, you should do a story on me. I try to avoid those. But it's the people that are just kind of doing their thing that I find most interesting. Well, I mean, technically you could say in middle school, but as far as a paid job, I worked at the NBC television station in Amarillo, Texas. And in the world of journalism, it's kind of like baseball in the minor leagues. You start small and hopefully work your way up. So I was at the University of Missouri in college. When I got my first job offer in Amarillo, I had to get a map. I had no idea where Amarillo, Texas was. But I wanted to do this for a living, so I packed up my car. I didn't have a whole lot to pack, put it all in my car and drove to Amarillo. Didn't know a soul there. And I have great friends that I worked with in Amarillo that are still friends today, because you're all in it together, kind of, especially when you're young. That's kind of the most fun time, when you're 21, 22, 23, 24, because everybody's just totally in it. So that was my first job in West Texas, the Panhandle. Well, the journalism world is a small world. You kind of wind up,
you'll work with somebody in Amarillo, and then they move on to St. Louis, and then everybody seems to get to a point where they kind of know everybody. So you stay in touch with the people that you worked with before. You might go on a story that takes you to, who knows, St. Paul, Minnesota. So you meet the people that work there. So if that's kind of what you're talking about, journalists stay in touch with each other. It's a tight-knit group. It's kind of a, I went to the University of Missouri. Everybody who graduated from Missouri sticks together, helps each other out. They still call it the Missouri Mafia because we all kind of stick together and help each other out. So journalists are friends, you know. I don't know if that works the same way if you're an electrician or something like that, but journalists stay together, so you create a big network. Great question. I graduated in May, and I did not have a job until September. May, when you're young like you guys are, June, July, August, September feels like 30 years. So I did not have a job. My friends were getting jobs, Tucson, Arizona, all these different places, and I'm like, man, nobody's ever going to hire me. I had more rejections from places than in small little towns. It's like, man, I can't even get a job in New Bern, North Carolina. I've never heard of it. But you apply. Basically what you do is you show them samples of your work, and they look at it, and, you know, you might get a rejection letter. You might not get anything, but you just hope and wait. I had one offer in some town in Arkansas. Actually, it was Monroe, Louisiana. I drove all the way down there for the job. I didn't like the looks of it, so I actually said no before I had a job. And I was desperate. I needed a job. I wanted to get in and start working. And I said no, I didn't like the looks of it. And 2 weeks later, I heard from Amarillo. So I enjoyed my summer that I had off. And when you look at it through eyes of today, I'm like, what was my hurry? You know, it was kind of nice to, I was working at a television station at the time, so you'll get a job eventually. It'll happen. Rejection's fine. That's part of it. But hopefully you have a tape of stories that'll make people look at it and say, yeah, I'll give this guy a shot. Great question. It's competitive, but I don't think that should scare you. I think if you're good, and I believed when I was young, that's why I turned down that first job, because I remember after turning it down, I said to the person who offered me the job, I said, nah, I don't think so, I'm going to wait. He told me at the time, and this is terrible, he should never have been a news director to tell somebody young this, but he said, you'll never work in broadcasting ever in your life. After I turned him down, you know. And I was confident enough in myself to believe that, no, I'll find a job, especially after this guy just told me that. So it's competitive, but if you want to do it, if you have the passion to do it, and believe me, that's so important in journalism because it's not easy work, it's hard work, you'll get over the competitive. People will find you, I guarantee it. Sports is a little tougher because there's not as many jobs. I know a lot of you guys want to do sports. A little bit tougher, but there's so many outlets for sports, they just keep growing. All these cable channels now that need sports people, so there are opportunities. Just work at it. Great question. I always thought I wanted to be a sports guy, honestly. So I started out kind of doing sports, at least when I was really young, like high school, even college. College, I wrote for the school newspaper, and it was all sports. That's what I wanted to do. And after a while, I kind of got bored with sports because I kind of realized it's the same thing every day, over and over. The coach, yeah, we got to give 110%. There's no tomorrow. You know, we got to work harder. We just got to get better. And after a while, that just got old to me. So my first couple of jobs, like in Amarillo and Cedar Rapids, Iowa, were real hard news. The lead story, tornado, crime, murder, courtrooms, you know, the real stuff. And then I came to Nashville, and one of your professors, Alan Griggs, hired me. And he offered me the job of a feature reporter. And I didn't even really know what that was, because I'd been so used to doing what everybody else calls hard news, real news, kind of. And the more I thought about it, I thought, well, I could be that reporter and cover murders and knock on people's doors and things like that, which needs to be done. Or I could go out and say, this guy's a fiddle player. And I ask him, how do you play, why do you like playing the fiddle? To me, that seemed like more fun than the other one. And if you can have a job where you can actually have fun doing it, get paid for it, why not? So after about 5 years of that side of news, ever since I've just been doing the feature side and would never go back to the other. I always felt doing the other that I kind of would go home at night and feel like all I did all day long was bother people. And there's a lot of people out there that deserve to be bothered. There's a lot that don't. So when I had that other opportunity, I went for it. But everybody's different. Everybody likes different things. I just happen to kind of like the feature side. You guys are good. These are all really good questions. When I went to college, I again started to write for the school paper. And I remember, again, writing sports, I think when I was a freshman, and there were two school newspapers, one that everybody read and one that nobody read. So I wanted to work for the one that everybody read. So I went there, and of course, as a guy who likes sports, you want to cover the football team, you want to cover the basketball team, get press passes, be in the press box. Well, because I was working at the popular paper, they gave me the beat of like women's volleyball and track and field, which I had no interest in. So I decided, I think I'd rather go work for that paper that nobody reads, but they had press passes where I could cover football and basketball and the things that interested me. So I did that, which was great. And then time goes on and all of a sudden different opportunities come along. There was a college radio station. Didn't pay, volunteer job, but I went and said, I'd like to work here. Was a DJ, just playing music, and then had my own sports show. So it's like, wow, this radio thing is fun. I like radio. I think I'm going to be a radio journalist. Well, then the next thing that comes along when I'm in school is they have a program in television. And now suddenly I realize I have the opportunity. Let me turn this phone off. Thought I had turned it off already. So anyway, I had the opportunity to work in television. And all of a sudden, it was a lot like the newspaper, because there's still an important writing element. It was a lot like radio because I had audio and sounds that you would hear. And now I have pictures to play with too. So it's kind of like a gigantic puzzle for me. It just opened that door to television, and I thought, this is like everything. This is all three things combined that I like. So that's when I realized, I want to do television. Pictures, sound, writing, all kind of scrambled together. You see the finished product here, but after you've been doing it a while, you'll figure out that it's a whole lot more that went into all of that than just the finished product. The writing, the pictures, matching the writing to the pictures, the little sounds, the beep of the police car's horn, just little things like that happen, but hopefully you're smart enough to put them in the story so that your stories just have some life to them, so that they're interesting, that people, again, will watch them, like hopefully you guys seem to be doing today.
Let's give Terry another round of applause.